Everything we thought we knew about the power dynamic in the Brown family changed the moment David Woolley stepped onto the screen. But you have to look closer to see the real game that was being played. What happened in Moab wasn't just a meet and greet between an ex-husband and a new fiance. According to new theories and behavioral analysis, it was a calculated psychological trap, a masterclass in exposing a narcissist without ever throwing a punch. Kody Brown strutted into that meeting believing he was the wise, experienced patriarch, ready to bestow his infinite wisdom on the new guy. He thought he was the alpha walking into his kingdom. But insider reports and body language experts suggest that David Woolley had set the stage for a God complex test that Kody was destined to fail. Kody walked in thinking he was the teacher, but he was left exposed as a man who had absolutely no control over his family, his emotions, or his own narrative. David didn't just meet Kody, he dismantled him. Before we dive into the deep end of this psychological showdown and reveal the exclusive theories about what really happened behind the scenes in Moab, do me a favor. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and get the uncensored truth about these reality TV manipulations, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We are digging up the stories they don't want you to hear, so turn on those notifications. Now, let's expose the truth. To understand why the Moab trip was such a disaster for Kody, we have to look at the lie he was trying to sell to the world. Leading up to this encounter, Kody had been engaging in what many are calling an apology tour. If you were watching closely, you noticed a shift in his confessionals. He was using softer language, talking about forgiveness and personal growth. There has been a lot of buzz online, with some insiders speculating that this sudden change in demeanor wasn't Kody's idea at all. Rumors suggest that network executives, or perhaps a crisis PR team, sat Kody down and told him the hard truth, that he was becoming the most hated man on television and needed to soften his image if he wanted to keep the show profitable. So Kody went into this season trying to play the role of the humble, misunderstood father who just wants peace. But here is the problem with trying to be humble when you have a massive ego. You can't keep the mask on for long, especially when you are challenged. Kody's apology tour was built on a house of cards. He was telling the cameras one thing, claiming he wanted happiness for Christine, but his actions were screaming something entirely different. The theory here is that Kody believed if he just said the right buzzwords, the audience would forget years of neglect and manipulation. He thought he could fool David Woolley the same way he thought he fooled the viewers. But he forgot that David isn't a cast member in Kody's script. David is a real person living in the real world, and he saw right through the performance. This brings us to the location itself, Moab. David invited Kody to his happy place. On the surface, this looks like a friendly gesture, a way to break the ice in a neutral, beautiful location. But let's look at this through the lens of a psychological test. By bringing Kody to a place that represents peace, stability, and groundedness for David, he was implicitly challenging Kody to match that energy. It was a test of character. Could Kody Brown, the man who feeds on chaos and drama, step into a peaceful environment and just be a normal, supportive person for one afternoon? It was a simple bar to clear, yet for Kody, it was impossible. There are reports circulating in the forums that Kody was actually terrified of this meeting. Some speculation suggests that Kody tried to reschedule or alter the terms of this meetup multiple times, knowing that he would be at a disadvantage without his usual home turf control. When you look at the footage, Kody's energy is frantic. He is pacing, he is loud, and his movements are jerky. Contrast that with David, who is still calm and collected. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a collision of two different realities. David was showing Kody what a secure life looks like, and Kody reacted with the panic of a man who realizes his chaos no longer has any power. The most ironic part of this entire setup, the self-own that Kody didn't see coming, was his attitude toward David's knowledge of the family. Kody walked into that situation claiming that David didn't know shit. Those were his words. He positioned himself as the keeper of all secrets, the only one who truly understood the complexities of plural marriage and the family history. Kody treated David like a clueless outsider who needed to be educated on how things really work. This is a classic narcissistic trait, the assumption that no one else can possibly understand the situation as well as they do. But here is the twist that Kody missed. David has been with Christine for a while. They talk, they share their lives. The idea that Christine hadn't told David exactly who Kody is and what he has done is laughable. Furthermore, David has access to the internet. He has likely seen the show. Theories suggest that David knew exactly who Kody was better than Kody knows himself. By acting like David was ignorant, Kody walked right into the trap. He started explaining things, justifying his past behavior, and trying to rewrite history, unaware that David already had the answer key. David was watching a man lie to his face, not with anger, but with a sort of pity. It wasn't that David didn't know anything. It was that he knew everything, and he was waiting to see if Kody would be honest. Kody failed that test within the first 5 minutes. Let's dig deeper into the credibility dilemma. This is where the mask really started to slip. Kody had spent the entire season telling us he had evolved. He claimed he was processing his grief and moving toward a place of acceptance. If that were true, if Kody had genuinely done the work on himself, he would have greeted David with a handshake and a genuine thank you for stepping up. A man who has truly grown doesn't feel threatened by his ex-wife's new happiness. But that's not what happened. Instead of a humble man making amends, we saw a territorial creature marking his ground. Kody's behavior in Moab wasn't just rude, it was a direct contradiction to his own narrative. You can't claim to be on a path of love while simultaneously sneering at the man who is actually loving your children. This created a double bind for Kody. If he was nice to David, he had to admit that he failed as a husband to Christine. If he was mean to David, he proved that his apology tour was. He was trapped. And because Kody lacks emotional intelligence, he chose the path of aggression, cementing his status as a hypocrite on national television. There is another layer to this that we need to discuss, and it involves the financial and professional stakes of this meeting. We have to remember that this isn't just a home video. This is a career for Kody. There have been whispers and reports for years that Kody's financial situation is much more precarious than he lets on. With 3 wives leaving, the family pot is gone. The theory is that Kody desperately needed this season to be a redemption arc, to keep the audience on his side and keep the show alive. This meeting with David was his Super Bowl. It was his last televised chance to prove to the audience, and more importantly to his estranged children, that he was capable of change. If he could have just held it together for one afternoon, he might have salvaged a shred of respect. But the pressure of the Moab trap was too much. The stakes were incredibly high. Failing this test didn't just mean looking bad in front of David. It meant confirming to the world that he is exactly the deadbeat dad the tabloids paint him to be. And make no mistake, Kody felt that pressure. You could see it in his eyes, the darting looks, the nervous laughter, the way he couldn't sit still. He knew he was losing, and the more he tried to regain control, the more he slipped. The tension in the air was palpable, but it wasn't coming from David. David was the anchor. Kody was the storm crashing against it, hoping to cause some damage, but only breaking himself apart. We need to talk about the concrete example that essentially ended Kody's reign. It was the moment Kody couldn't handle David's calm authority and decided decided to rewrite history in real time. He looked at Christine right in front of her new husband and blurted out, "I did love you." Now, pause and think about the insanity of that statement. For years, literally years, Kody has been screaming from the rooftops that he never loved Christine. He told the world he was manipulated into marriage. He told his other wives he wasn't attracted to her. He used "I never loved you" as a weapon to devalue her and justify his neglect. But the moment he saw another man valuing her, the moment he saw David treating her like a prize, Kody's narrative imploded. He couldn't stand the idea that David was getting something he threw away, so he tried to reclaim it. But this wasn't an act of love. This was a territorial pissing contest. He wasn't saying "I loved you" to validate Christine. He was saying it to invalidate David. He was trying to say "she was mine first." It was a violation of every social code, a manipulation tactic so transparent that it was almost embarrassing to watch. And this is where the trap snapped shut. David didn't get jealous. He didn't get insecure. He didn't wonder if Christine still had feelings for Kody. David Woolley looked at that desperate display and called it bullshit. When David called bullshit, he wasn't just defending Christine. He was dismantling Kody's entire reality in real time. That moment was the knockout blow because it exposed the manipulative bro code violation Kody was attempting. You have to understand the psychology here. In Kody's mind, men are supposed to have a secret understanding, a pact where they protect each other's egos. Kody thought he could look David in the eye, say, "I loved her," and that David would nod out of respect for Kody's past ownership. But David didn't play by those toxic rules. By rejecting that lie, David signaled that he wasn't there to be Kody's friend or his peer. He was there to protect his wife from her abuser. This shut Kody down completely because Kody has no defense against the truth. He relies on people being too polite to call him out. But David Woolley isn't polite when it comes to manipulation. He is protective. But there is a darker, more hidden layer to this intimidation that the cameras didn't explicitly state, but we need to talk about it because it explains everything. We have to follow the money. There is a massive credibility dilemma at play here involving finances. Insider theories and reports on Kody's net worth paint a picture of a man who might be drowning in debt. We know about the property on Coyote Pass sitting undeveloped for years, sinking money into a hole in the ground. We've heard the rumors about loan shuffling and the panic over losing the income from 3 wives. Contrast that with David Woolley. David is a self-made man with a successful drywall business. He is secure. He has built something tangible. This financial disparity is likely what terrified Kody the most. For decades, Kody maintained control over his wives partly through resource control. He was the one causing the financial chaos, but also the one managing it. He is used to being the provider in title, if not always in practice. Walking into Moab, Kody wasn't just facing a new husband. He was facing a man who didn't need anything from him. David didn't need Kody's money, he didn't need Kody's show, and he certainly didn't need Kody's approval. That kind of independence is kryptonite to a narcissist. Kody realized he couldn't financially intimidate David, and he couldn't impress him with his reality TV star status because David clearly didn't care. This stripped Kody of his usual weapons, leaving him feeling naked and defenseless. This insecurity manifested in what we can call the "I don't know" setup. Kody kept insisting that David didn't understand the family, that David was walking into a situation blind. Kody claimed David didn't know shit about the complexity of their lives. This was Kody trying to reclaim the high ground. He was trying to frame himself as the holder of forbidden knowledge, the only one smart enough to navigate the labyrinth of polygamy. But the irony is tragic. David knew exactly what was going on. In fact, David probably had a clearer picture of the family dynamic than Kody did because David was listening to Christine, while Kody has spent years only listening to the sound of his own voice. David's silence during Kody's rants wasn't ignorance, it was assessment. As David perfectly summarized later in just 6 words, it's all about what he wants. That simple sentence destroyed Kody's entire apology tour. While Kody was spending hours trying to spin a complex narrative about why things fell apart, blaming everyone but himself, David cut through the noise and identified the core behavioral flaw immediately. Kody is incapable of decentering himself. He would rather ruin a family gathering, ruin a nice afternoon in Moab, and ruin his own reputation than let another man be the alpha in the room for even 5 minutes. David saw this, labeled it, and refused to engage with it. And this leads us to the most pathetic moment of the entire encounter, the failed emotional appeal involving Robin. When Kody realized he wasn't winning the showdown with David, he tried to triangulate. He went to the confessionals and started complaining that David was too familiar with Robin, or that David spoke to Robin instead of deferring to him. Kody was acting offended, claiming that David breached some invisible protocol of respect. But let's look at what really happened. David was simply being a normal, social human being. He was making conversation. Kody demands absolute loyalty and submission, but he offers absolutely no respect or self-control in return. He was mad because David treated Robin like a person, not like Kody's property. Kody wanted David to ask for permission to speak, to kiss the ring, to acknowledge Kody as the head of the household. When David treated everyone as equals, Kody took it as a personal insult. This is the behavior of a man who demands the crown of a king while acting like a petulant toddler. He tried to play the victim, acting as if David had done something wrong by being friendly, but the audience saw right through it. It was a beta male meltdown broadcast to the world. Kody was grasping at straws, looking for any reason to paint David as the villain, but all he did was highlight his own insecurity. The stakes here were escalating by the second. This wasn't just a private spat anymore. It was a televised character study. The thematic hypocrisy was on full display. Kody has spent seasons telling his wives they need to be sweet and loyal and keep the peace. Yet here he was in a beautiful setting, unable to keep the peace for even an hour. He was the aggressor. He was the dramatic one. He was the one bringing the negative energy. David, the outsider, was the one embodying the virtues Kody claims to value. David was steady, he was protective, and he was calm. It's important to note the body language here. Kody was physically recoiling, crossing his arms, looking away, constantly shifting his weight. He looked like a trapped animal. David, on the other hand, stood his ground. He didn't invade Kody's space, but he didn't retreat either. He just held up a mirror. And that is what Kody hates most. A mirror. Facing an actual grown man who wasn't afraid of him, who wasn't dependent on him, and who saw through his lies, Kody shrank. He shrank into silence. He shrank into petty complaints. He shrank into a shell of the patriarch he pretends to be. But the trap wasn't done yet. Kody had one more card to play, or so he thought. He believed that if he could just control the narrative in the aftermath, he could spin this. He thought he could go back to his safe space with Robin and rewrite the events of the day. But the cameras were rolling, the producers were watching, and David Woolley had already won the war without firing a single shot. The Moab mastermind wasn't about a complex scheme. It was about letting Kody destroy himself. David gave him the rope and Kody tied the knot. As the sun set on that Moab trip, the reality of the situation began to set in for everyone. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a transition of power. The era of Kody Brown controlling the narrative was officially dead. He had walked into the trap thinking he was the hunter, but he was clearly the prey. And as we move into the final phase of this analysis, we have to look at the permanent consequences of this day. Because once the cameras stopped stopped rolling on that specific scene, the fallout was catastrophic for Kody's ego. The fallout wasn't just about a bad afternoon. It was about the total collapse of the fantasy world Kody had built for himself. This brings us to the isolation reality check. For decades, Kody operated in a bubble where he was the sun and everyone else revolved around him. But in Moab, facing David Woolley, Kody was forced to look at a man who wasn't orbiting anything. David stood firm, rooted in reality, and Kody crashed against him like a wave hitting a cliff. It was a stark reminder that outside of his own home, outside of the relationships he controls with money and fear, Kody has no power. He realized in that moment that he couldn't manipulate David, he couldn't scare him, and he certainly couldn't command him. This is where the difference between alpha and real strength became undeniable. Kody has spent years defining masculinity as being loud, being demanding, and having multiple wives who obey his every command. He thinks power looks like a throne. But David Woolley effortlessly demonstrated what secure, healthy masculinity actually looks like. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to demand respect. He just earned it by being present. David held up a mirror to Kody simply by existing as a decent man. Faced with an actual grown adult who wasn't afraid of him, Kody didn't step up. He shrank. He shrank into the background, muttering complaints to the producers, looking for an exit strategy because he knew he was outmatched. The thematic hypocrisy here is the core moral of the entire story. Kody demands absolute loyalty and submission from the people around him, yet he offers absolutely no self-control or respect in return. He walked into that meeting demanding the crown of a king, but he acted like a petulant toddler who didn't get his way. He wanted David to bow down, but David stood tall. And because Kody is incapable of self-reflection, he will never understand why he lost that day. He will likely go to his grave believing he was the victim of a bad edit or a disrespectful outsider, never realizing that the only person who humiliated Kody Brown in Moab was Kody Brown. We have reached the point of no return. This wasn't just another episode of drama. It was the final nail in the coffin of Kody's narrative. David's test, whether intentional or just a byproduct of his character, publicly stripped Kody of his remaining dignity. Kody realized in real time that he had absolutely zero power over Christine anymore. He saw that she was protected, loved, and financially secure without him. He realized he had zero power over David. And most devastating of all, he likely realized that the audience saw it too. His patriarchal reign was officially dead. He walked away from that meeting not as the leader of a plural family, but as a lonely, bitter man with a bruised ego and a shrinking kingdom. David didn't just win the interaction. He exposed the entire game. He showed us that the monster of Moab wasn't a monster at all, just a small man casting a large shadow. And all it took was a little bit of light to make him disappear. Kody's complex, his apology tour, and his desperate need for control all crumbled because one man refused to play along. And that is the ultimate trap for a narcissist: indifference. David didn't hate Kody, he just didn't care about Kody's rules, and that indifference destroyed him. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the psychological warfare of reality TV and want to see more insider reports and behavioral breakdowns like this, you know what to do. Smash that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more of these investigations. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We have so many more secrets to expose and timelines to unravel, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.